Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Liberty Warrior Nation Network, LWN. It is good to have you guys here this evening. It is Thursday, February 26, 2026, and I'm so excited for the show tonight. We've got so much to cover like we always do, but it's always better when we have Jeff B here, and we do. John E is also here, and I get really excited because they always say you should surround yourself with people smarter than you. So it is an honor and a privilege every time they come on. I enjoy what they have to say, and they have all different perspectives, just like you guys do in the audience. So make sure tonight you put your comments in chat because we want to hear what your thoughts are, what you have to say as well. What are we going to cover? Well, we're going to cover a big bunch of topics, including Hillary's testimony today. If you guys saw any of that, it was supposed to be all secret and quiet and off the record, and they were going to put out comments throughout the day. Well, Hillary came out and gave a press conference, which was really interesting. Then we've got U.S. and Iran negotiations that were going on in Geneva. We're going to cover that. We've got Pakistan and Afghanistan battling it out. Well, that's not a good thing. John E. and Jeff B. both have a reason why that's not good news for any of us. Also, we've got the FBI has fired additional agents who worked on the investigation into Trump, who participated in the probe to hoard classified documents. So there's that and so much more today. I couldn't even keep up with the news. So we're going to get to all that after we play the intro. Also, a quick update on LW's mom. She's still in the same condition. No new news on that. But remember, I do have the address if you want to send flowers or a card pinned to our Facebook page. The great mods that we have will also be dropping that information in chat if you want to send a card or flowers. Also keep LWN in your prayers because he's under the weather as well. So with all that being said, I'm going to play the intro with 30 seconds here. Go grab your drink of choice and your snacks and get ready to have a great conversation with me, John E. and Jeff B. right after this. Got to add myself to the stage. I'm hitting all these buttons and I forgot to add myself. Anyways, hello, everybody. Welcome, John E., Jeff B. How are you guys this evening?
Doing great.
So are you guys' heads spinning with everything that's been breaking today?
No, it's just another day in paradise.
What about you, Jeff B?
And the fire department hasn't even opened the hose yet.
There you go.
It just seems incredible. I don't know. It was just a crazy day. So I don't know where you guys want to start, but I figured it'd probably be easy to do Hillary first and the deposition, because once we get into Pakistan, Iran, and all that, I know there's a lot of details to it that we need to dig into, and it's interwoven. But with Hillary's testimony today at the House Oversight Committee investigation or hearing, there was a little weird thing that happened. And this is why we warn people about, you got to watch who you follow. Don't just trust everybody, because Benny Johnson is the one that leaked this photo of Hillary, and he got it from Rep. Boebert, gave it to him apparently, and gave him permission to post this picture of Hillary in the hearing, right? But it's supposed to be closed to the press. There was supposed to be nothing leaking out, and it was going to be every hour. Comer was going to come out and update people on what was going on. Well, this photo leaked, and then they put a pause to everything going on with the Oversight Committee. But Benny Johnson actually went out and said that Hillary Clinton just stormed out of the Epstein deposition because I posted a photo of her testifying. Now Clinton PR team is crying about me to the press. This is insane. So why I'm saying it's a warning, she did not do that. It was an exaggeration. And Benny's I thought, pretty reliable. And I followed Benny. But when you glamorize or you say something that isn't true, especially at a time like this, I kind of take you off of my follow list. So that's kind of a weird thing that happened today. And I'll ask you guys about that as well. But the other thing I want to comment on is where Hillary and all the press were, and where Hillary gave her presser after the end of her testimony today. It was at the Chappaqua Performing Arts Center. So I thought that was really weird that she would be doing that there. So you guys just got to be careful who you follow and make sure that you find a bunch of different sources that you feel you can trust. And if they start going off to one side, there's a reason for that. Whether it's they're being paid now, whether it's they're doing it for likes and clicks, I don't know. I just thought Benny Johnson was reliable, and it was a big disappointment that he came out and glamorized it in that way. So what do you guys think about what happened with Hillary and the testimony and the stuff she had to say today in her presser? Jeff B., you want to go first?
Yeah, I didn't see any of it. I didn't even hear anything about the presser. So there was no live coverage.
Right. The only thing that was outside. Comer was giving updates, but then they paused it and then they went back, and then Hillary came out and gave her own presser. Now, Hillary looked really good, and I don't want to say that because of all the conspiracy about the different stuff out there, but she looked really good, and she really just was saying she had no idea about anything going on with the crimes with Epstein or what was going on. She said she really never met him. Now, we know Ghislaine Maxwell was indeed at Chelsea Clinton's wedding. There's pictures of her there, but that's not Epstein. And she said her husband is basically innocent, that he left his relationship / friendship or whatever it was with Epstein way before all the crimes started. That's what she had to say.
Yeah, documents say something different.
Yeah.
Now,
I think that's,
go ahead.
I think that's horseshit. I think that should have been televised. If they weren't in a skiff, if they weren't talking anything classified, the American people should know the information firsthand, because one, I won't say because she was a first lady, that's just a title, but you were a Secretary of State and you were also a presidential candidate. So I lay that at the feet of Congress and the fucking attorneys, because you didn't give Steve Bannon that opportunity. You didn't give Pete that same opportunity. I now that I heard that pisses me off, because it should have been out there and to the public.
Okay, so Jeff, let me go wide, because I agree with you 100%. But then when I listened to Comer's explanation and Jim Jordan, the reason they wanted this deposition, and also the deposition, the video, everything was recorded. It will be released once everything has been approved by both the Democrats and the Republicans. It'll be made, it'll be released, and we'll all be able to view it. So that's one thing. But Comer and Jordan, in an open setting, and I don't know how many of the listeners actually watch Senate and congressional testimonies and hearings, but the Democrats, they focus on J6. There have been, but the way that they obfuscate and never ask relevant questions would have just eaten away the time for a very serious deposition. So he wanted to eliminate the Democrats' ability to be on the stage during this deposition. He wanted it to be a serious deposition and held him to those standards. Now, as far as Boebert, what she did, she broke the House rules. If that would have been a Democrat that had done that to a Republican witness, everybody's ass would have flew open. and she shouldn't have done it, and she ought to be called on the carpet for it, and I'm sure she was. But I mean, Hillary, if she would have chosen, because there was an agreed upon format, everything was discussed, and that's one thing I want to make everybody needs to understand. Hillary's had 4 months of preparation with her freaking attorneys on exactly, here's where they'll hit you. Here's the questions they're going to ask. So not saying she'd never met Jeffrey Epstein. Okay, that's a truthful statement. She's not going to lie because she knows that entrapment and that danger of that. But the fact, when you go and you look, and I've got it pulled up, when you go and you look at the Epstein documents, there are thousands of them related to Hillary and Jeffrey Epstein contacting people and funneling money to Hillary's campaign. And a lot of the emails, there'll be okay, let's do this for Hillary. And then there'll be a mention of Trump. So then Trump's name's in the same email. So there's no guilt associated with anybody having anything, but there's a lot of them, the emails. Epstein wanted Hillary to win the presidency. Epstein did not want Trump to win the presidency. That's in the documents. It's very clear. So why wouldn't he want Trump? Because Trump had said, hey, I'm going to distance myself from you. I don't want you back at Mar-a-Lago again, especially after he was indicted and arrested. So people blew it out of proportion. But now Hillary's testimony and her answers, and I believe she answered every question according to some of the Republicans. So if she answered every question, it tells you what 4 months of good preparation will do for you. And, that's access that you and I wouldn't have, questions where we'd sit there and have to think about and reflect on. She was well prepared, and she's still a snarky, evil bitch.
Yeah, well, she also is fighting to have this public. She said it should be public, which kind of blew me away because they've been dodging even appearing for this for months, like you just explained. Now, Bill's turn is tomorrow. But what do you think the reasoning of her wanting it to be public and everybody seeing it, Jeff?
Because they know they're not going to release it.
They'll show it. We're going to get to see it, Jeff. Trust me, brother.
I hope so. When I sit back and look at stuff like this, if it were you or I, and we had some of these accusations laid against us, do you think that the court system would allow us, hey, give us 4 months, let us sit and negotiate with our attorneys? So, I can pretty much imagine the judge saying, bullshit, put it on the docket. Now,
yeah.
I mean, now here's going to be the great question with this. Now that this precedent has been set, who's going to be the first one to use it? In a civilian court. Look, I mean, you set precedent. Justice is supposed to be deaf and blind.
Yeah.
And, we're not seeing it. But look, hopefully the people that were on the panel in Congress, if they were worth their salt, they knew all the answers before they asked the questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, when some of the 3 of the questions, one of the congressman was on with Fox earlier, and his primary questions were people that he knew. Ghislaine Maxwell was at Chelsea's wedding, but he set her up in advance by asking her if she had any, what was her relationship. Okay, she went through Epstein. No, I never met him. Never. Okay, good deal. Never went to the island. Okay, good deal. But then Ghislaine, what was your relationship with Mix Maxwell? And she described it as just simply a casual relationship. Well, then you look at the wedding list of all the people that were invited to Chelsea's wedding, and for Ghislaine to be there. And so how many people did you leave off the list? And so just as a casual acquaintance, you did invite, and then two people have given sworn testimony, one a victim and one a person that was at Epstein Island, of Bill Clinton's presence. So he asked her if she was aware that there were people that had already given sworn testimony to the fact that Bill was on Epstein Island, because Bill said he wasn't. And the one victim is that Virginia Gifford, what's her name, Gifford, the one that Prince Andrews, and she in her testimony and sworn deposition said that Bill Clinton was there and she saw him there multiple times. So that's going to be a stumbling block so the congressman asked Hillary, well, why would these people lie? And her answer was, I don't know. You have no understanding or why they would, what would cause these witnesses just to say that Bill was there when you say he wasn't, he says he wasn't. I don't know. So that's a coached answer.
Well, I'm going to say, too, a lot of people are fed up with the Clintons. Bill testifies tomorrow. A lot of people are fed up with hearing the word Epstein, the word conspiracy, and all this. But the reality is it all ties in together for the bigger picture of what everybody's going through, and it affects us in every facet of our lives, financially, emotionally, everything else, with what's going on with the world. Even there was somebody today that said to me, a friend of mine, who doesn't follow any of this. And when I start talking, they tune out, about this stuff, because they just don't handle it, want to handle it, whatever. But they actually said to me today, with this Epstein stuff, I cannot believe this. This is worldwide with like big, huge people, like the CEO or the head of the World Economic Forum stepped down today. We don't like the World Economic Forum, but he stepped down. A lot of these people in the other countries are stepping down or being arrested. Unfortunately, it's not happening here in our country, and I think that's what people are sick of. But when we talk about this stuff on shows like we do with the information, John, that you share, and Jeff, that you share, it's important that people have the deeper understanding. And that's what I believe that we offer here at this channel, is the deeper understanding and the connections at all. It's not that we're obsessed with Epstein or the Clintons. We're obsessed with figuring out what the hell's going on worldwide and in our country, and why our leaders and representatives make the decisions that they do. They're not for the benefit of us at all. So, Jeff, if you want to talk about Hillary, what you want to say about it, go ahead. It's your turn. I didn't interrupt.
I find it. Where did you say she gave her remarks at?
The Performance Center. It was it's the Chappaqua Performing Arts Center. I can't say the word.
Yeah, in New York?
Yes, in New York. I think that was weird too. Why would you be doing that?
Well, here we go. Let me pull that letter out of the alphabet.
Okay.
Performing arts, you're watching a movie.
That's what people say. It's just, and it sounds so cliche, and we've been seeing it. Oh, Doc P said it's a mile from her home, but still, it's just these weird things that happen. I want to say a quick thank you, you guys. We got 3 coffees bought for the channel, and from Jackie P, and she said, I'm sending healing vibes to Mike and his mom. This channel saved me in 2020. Well, thank you so much. That is a big compliment for all of us. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Jackie.
it is.
Thank you so much. So we'll have to see what happens with Bill tomorrow, and we'll see if it all comes out. Jeff doesn't think it's going to come out. We were promised it's going to come out, but I wouldn't be surprised if something happens to it all, just with the weird stuff today. And like I said, with Benny Johnson just pushing it forward like he did and making it dramatic, it just doesn't help the cause of us trying to figure out what the heck is going on in this country at all. Right. So yeah. So moving on to the next thing, let's go ahead, and you guys want to cover some Pakistan and Afghanistan of what's going on. Maybe Jeff can start, and then we'll go to you, John.
Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah. So earlier today, Pakistan did an incursion into Afghanistan, and the preliminary reports are that Pakistan took out the acting head of the Taliban. And I'm sure Pakistan asked us for our help just because I think the ISI helped us during the bin Laden raid. That probably will never become public. But these guys here, I mean, they don't fight like we fight. They don't care. They'll do suicide bombs, roadside bombs, you know. And my biggest concern, like John was saying backstage, is these knuckleheads have nukes, and India and Pakistan don't get along because a little sliver of land called Kashmir, and that whole region, you know, may erupt over this. Just one false move, and you know, Pakistan, you know, they have advanced, you know, they have, I think they have F-16 type aircraft.
Yeah.
So I mean, they're no joke. But then you got to think too, Taliban and Afghanistan have a lot of our equipment. So
yeah, you know, and they're both blaming each other, because I watched a little bit of it today when it was breaking, and they're all along the borders, and they're both saying that each other started it. And Afghanistan is saying Pakistan got them first a little while ago, but they are just blaming each other. And it just doesn't, it's never good when obviously that comes out. It seems like it came out of nowhere, and we're dealing with Iran and everything and the negotiations going on there as well. But you're right, they don't fight fair. And it is concerning, because remember all the equipment and everything that we left. Remember all the arms and stuff that they have. So as we transfer from that into Iran, what concerns me about, you know, wait, I'm going to wait. John, if you have anything to say about Pakistan, you go ahead and say that first, and then we'll get into Iran, because I have some concerns I want to talk about.
Well, Pakistan, Afghanistan, any of the stands, just understand that these people hate each other because of their ideologies. Mm-hmm. We're not going to change that. I mean, those people have been battling and killing each other for hundreds of years. It's not going to stop. But what's really frightening is the ability to push a button. And that all, you know, you got to calm everybody, because, like Jeff said, you know, Trump had to negotiate a deal between Pakistan and India, because they're both nuclear armed, you know. How serious can it get? One of those knuckleheads decide, I've had enough, and you know, we're going to light up Kabul.
Well, do they have any kind of agreement to not use nuclear weaponry? Isn't there
part of they're part of the treaty.
Yeah.
And how good are those treaties?
I don't know. Why do we even do them then? It's like, why do we even do them?
Well, we do them to try to calm everybody's fears, because that's a no, you can't win that game. You know, that's all been war gamed and played out multiple times. You know, that's not good for humanity. Nukes are not cool.
Well, no, and that's where we're at. And with the Iran negotiations that we are doing, you know, there's only two simple things that Trump has said for a very long time that he wanted: that Iran can't have nuclear weapons, that he would prefer to negotiate over a war, right? Well, Iran came out and said, you know, they may be willing to slow it down, the uranium production, but they won't stop it. And the reason Trump, I would think, wouldn't want a war with Iran, other than the obvious about our military members and families and loved ones that we would lose or that would be involved over there, is I don't think we have the ammunitions to be able to be ready to have a war. We've been helping Israel out a lot. I don't think we have the stockpiles, and I don't think we have the industrial capacity to replace what we would use. So that's where I want to come to you guys and see what you have to think about that. Are we ready for any kind of war?
Well, if we're not, we better get ready, because, you know, Yeah, I wrote a post on Facebook, it might be 2 days ago, and I tied all of this because we've got to have a great understanding. Everything always links to money and finance. And then when you bring in the attachment of our DOJ silencing and not releasing any more information from the Epstein documents, because contained in the Epstein documents is a lot of ties to world and global finance of some of these wars. He was all over Ukraine, all over, in the enticement. They knew that if NATO started to encroach into Ukraine and to arm Ukraine, that Putin wasn't going to tolerate it, but yet they did it. But in Epstein, looked at everything as a way to profit and gain. So he's tied to this. And then the silencing of let's shut this down. Let's stop that Epstein distraction and the release of any further documents now. Let's start focusing on Iran. And when you go to that, because inside of the Epstein documents are great volumes of links to Mossad in Israel. And I don't care what anyone says, Tucker Carlson's interview with Mike Huckabee was very telling.
Yes.
And how the Zionist, and he openly said and questioned, and Huckabee's willing to call himself a Zionist, and there are Zionist Christians. But the Zionist Jews that are in power in Israel, they want to expand their occupation of land and territory because they view it as a biblical prophecy and what God told to Abraham. So, the Abraham Accords in all of that, the peace is made. Well, then who broke the peace? And it's actually Israel. Israel has made incursions on their neighbors all throughout the Middle East. That's just a fact. They can't run from that. And then when you declare that Iran is the main funder and sponsor of terror, well, that's not absolutely the truth. It's the Sunnis. And when you break it down between the Shiites and the Sunnis have done more funding of terror than Iran ever thought about doing. So you're not openly being honest with the American people. And if you're going to start a war, well, let's have some honest conversation about it, and let's just don't do it because it appeases the need of Israel to have the whole world drop Epstein and the whole world forget the attachment of why that was a dark intelligence operation. Epstein was an operative. When you read the documents, it becomes very clear. He was an operative not only for them, but our CIA. That's how he got Acosta when they wrapped him up and brought him in Florida, and how he got the sweetheart deal that he got. It was because they had to tell Acosta and the FBI, come here, boys. This guy's actually working for us, and what you're entering into a part of intelligence that we can't have the public know about, because the funding. And when you look at some of the people that are resigning and that have been fired and moving on, there's one lady that's real interesting because let me see. I'm scrolling through and trying to look on some documents.
Okay, while you
Go
do
ahead.
that,
Jeff B.
Jeff B. So there's whatever you want to add to that, but then there's also a question on the screen if you want to answer that too, sir.
I don't think that Israel owns Trump. My biggest fear with Israel, and I'll clarify this by saying the government, the Knesset, the prime minister, the president of Israel, they own our Congress and they own our staffers. And I understand, and I don't think a lot of people get it, is some of these staffers who make these decisions without, the president knowing, because of plausible deniability, these people weren't elected. They were appointed by, there's people in the White House that, never change. They're there from president to president. And don't think that they don't have influence, because they do, through lobbying groups and the different methods. But as I think there's a very close working relationship between Trump and Bibi, but I think Trump has Bibi on a leash because of what Trump knows about what the Israeli government and the Knesset have done, just with Epstein alone. I mean, our Congress is bought and paid for by a foreign country. I mean, you look at the State of the Union. Look how many congressional members were wearing, lapel pins that had Israel and American flags on it.
Very true, but I don't think they should be doing that. I mean,
No,
I don't.
absolutely not.
And
I
I was going to say, you got Huckabee, not just Huckabee, Jeff and John. You've got Ted Cruz. They're putting Israel first. Like, why don't you go over there and represent them then? It's not the people, and we can't say that enough. It's not the people. It's the government. It's the crookedness. It's the control that we are fighting against, that we don't agree with. And not only that, Bibi keeps trying to tell us what to do all the time.
Right.
He's like addresses us in his pressers. Go ahead, Jeff.
Well, that's like the first time I went to the Middle East.
Okay.
As an attaché. And, the State Department gives you a briefing, when you're in certain areas, what areas to avoid and stuff like that. And in the hotel that we were staying in, there was a coffee shop. And so me and two other guys from Aachen had went down. We're just trying to relax and get ready for what we were going to do. And, and I was asking some of the people there that, spoke, because most Middle Easterners, they speak very good English. And just the American people out there, the Arabs don't have, now I'm not speaking about the radicalized. The Arabs, they like Americans. They just don't like our government because of the association with us in the Israeli government. We do the beck and calling of the Israelis. And, it took several years for me to get that through my head, how intertwined Israel is in our government. And, it's all you have to do is read some of the stuff in the Epstein files. I mean, you see how, Mossad and Sierra McCall have infiltrated our government. And, going, you can see, and I know we're going to get into it, but you could see the look on Chuck Schumer's face when he come out of that Gang of Eight meeting after he was briefed by Ratcliffe and Marco Rubio. He didn't have a snide remark to say.
And he's always got something to say.
He always has some type of dig. And, he just basically come out and says, what we were shown today is very serious. And this administration has to come out and prove it to the American people. And I have a theory of what I think that is. And it goes back to the Biden administration with that guy that walked across the border and the reporter asking where he was from and what his name was. And he said, don't worry, you'll know who I am soon enough.
Wow.
Because I believe that there probably is something in this country that possibly will make 9/11 look like a walk in the park if they're able to do it.
Well, my question is that I have as well about Iran. What happens if we take out the leader and Iran is pushed aside and no more? Wouldn't that make Israel the controller of the Middle East?
Well,
No.
No, no. And
What do you? Go ahead.
and the reason why I think that, number one, if with the amount of equipment that we're moving over there, we have 3 carrier battle groups sitting over there. And when I was in Afghanistan during the whole Tarnak Farms, when we originally tried to get bin Laden, one of our submarines can lay some hate. I mean, those jokers, if people, and if there's anybody in the audience that's ever rode a sub, you know what I'm talking about. These things are modern marvels. And, I haven't been in one in 25 years, so I can only imagine the technology, how it is advanced. But there is, if they're going to do this, and I believe it's, especially after today, because I believe it was Witkoff who had told the Iranian delegation that you can produce uranium. The only way you can produce uranium, because that's the whole basis behind this nuclear, is you have to sell it to us.
Yeah.
And I was told that they walked out for a break, and that was a no-go, because they didn't want Iran to sell it to North Korea or any of these rogue nations, so they can further along their nuclear development. So, the only way I think this is going to be resolved, especially with the Shah's grandson, they're going to have to take out the Ayatollah. And this is where I think, if this White House is worth their salt, they're going to let Israel handle that portion of it. That's going to be the penance for, the Israeli government, is you are going to be responsible. We'll help you out, because I don't think there's going to be any ground troops inside of Iran other than spec ops doing targeting. But I think all the troops that we're sending, all the equipment that we're sending over there, is going to be for our allies for force protection. But I believe if any troops are going to be on the ground, it'll probably be the IDF. But I think this is probably, if this kicks off, and I'm pretty certain that I'd be 90% sure that it's going to kick off, it's going to make shock and awe from the Iraq war, the second one, look like preschool.
Well, Iran is much bigger and all that. And, obviously it was, I think Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff there, it was apparently round 2 of 3 negotiations they were going to have. And they want them to stop producing it and the uranium transferring to other places. But Iran's said they're not going to do it. And before we get to what John thinks about this, to add some fuel to the fire, today I saw Kim Jong-un from North Korea wants to build up and expand their nuclear arsenal. And he said if the U.S. wants to remain an ally or friendly with North Korea, they have to recognize them as a nuclear power country, and that we need to accept it.
Well, I look at North Korea almost, in a sense, a vassal state of the CIA. And that government, or that way of life, is being pushed by ultra right leaning, because we have to have a boogeyman in order, for some of these agencies to stay in effect. And, I think that's where I give credit to Trump. When he met with Kim Jong-un in Vietnam, people were giving him shit about it, but hey, at least he wanted to sit down and talk to me.
Yeah.
And, because no matter what you feel in the politics of it, I mean, those people, one, they've been brainwashed. Of course, the American people have been brainwashed as well, but they're just on a different scale.
Yeah.
And you only know what you know, and what you're being told, by your country or your government. I'd like to see the United States help the North Korean people, because it's not their fault that they were born and raised in a totalitarian government.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
John?
Well, I want to go back. You guys were talking, and Jeff
Go
just
ahead.
gave everybody. I want to give you a clear understanding of something factual. When you look at Washington, D.C., our Congress and our Senate, and if you do just a little deep dive into lobbyists, because they are controlled, manipulated, they get their seats on committees through lobbyist donations. The largest lobbyist group in Washington, D.C. is Israel. They have 6 lobbyists per representative.
Jeez.
Listen to that. 6 Israeli lobbyists for every single congressman and senator in Washington, D.C. So there, if you want to understand the power that they have in the United States of America, they have a grip on the corrupt, foul Congress and Senate. And we know who all the role players are, the big players, Cruz and Lindsey Graham, but it's not just them. When you look, we have 3 people running for Senate here in Louisiana to replace Dr. Bill Cassidy, and he will be gone. But then when I start looking, okay, I always pull up they've got to reveal how many, what their contribution and who's contributing to their campaign. And every one of them are receiving money from AIPAC. And that to me is concerning, because that's one of the controlling arms in the funding of political campaigns by the Israelis. So we do have that issue that we have to confront as a nation. Are we going to allow any foreign influence to that great length with the money that they pour in? And then when we think about how many dollars do we fund and give Israel, $13 billion annually? How much of that then is being funneled back into political campaigns? So when you take out, and Musk took out USAID, which was a Democrat arm of funneling money back, from grants and things, giving money back into the political campaign of Democrats, but they allowed the Republicans to maintain the arm that is AIPAC. And AIPAC lobbyists ought to be kicked out of Washington, and the only people that should be able to lobby Congress are the people. And until we get that squared away, we're going to be in these endless wars. Iran, regime change is something I think every American could get behind, but not at the risk of starting a full-blown war. When you look at the size of the armada that we've got stationed there now, the last time that this occurred was days before we entered and went into Iraq. So don't think that once you assemble all these, you've got the aircraft carriers, all the destroyers, everything that we've got stationed there is not for a dog and pony show. It's to launch some type of an attack on Iran. Can they be precise, and do they have enough intel inside of Iran to be able to take out Ayatollah? Let's pray they do, because I don't want to see any, there are a lot of Iranians that's seeking regime change inside. 30 to 50,000 of them have been murdered for protesting against this ideology. They see the decline in their nation, and it's a republic. This guy gets elected. Well, okay, but there are still factions of people inside Iran that seek regime change, that want a regime change, that are tired of the religious oppression. Women, I mean, and because those, when you see, and it's sad to say that for every man, there's two women protesting in the street that are being round up and executed, put in prison. So it's, I hope that if we're going to take something that is very precise, and because Midnight Hammer, we got to remember President Trump with his ego saying that he had taken their ability to pursue a nuclear weapon off the table with Operation Midnight Hammer. And the fact that the Israelis did all the exercise to be able to take out tracking and everything to where the B-2s could get in there, that was an awesome operation. And that was supposed to be the end of it. They don't have now. We bought ourselves 5 years of time to negotiate. Well, we're far away from 5 years. And we're going to just all of a sudden, did they develop a nuclear weapon overnight? Bullshit. That's not true. There's no proof of that. Are they developing and enriching uranium? Yes, they are. And here's the thing. They have that right. They have that through UN treaties and charters. They have the right to be a nuclear nation. When you talk about nuclear energy, when you talk about the use of what's necessary for military medical equipment, they can enrich, but they have to have they can't just start cranking out yellow cake. And Trump took that off the table with Midnight Hammer. So, I would want to see some evidence that there's something that says they have a nuclear ability. And if they did, well, then Operation Midnight Hammer, was that just a smoke screen? Was that just all bullshit? And they now, how did this all of a sudden? I'm not buying part of the story, and we don't know all the intel. And thank God I wouldn't want my head to blow up.
Right.
But there's something happening. And I just really fear that Israel's influence over our political body. And I don't think that BB has control of Trump, but how many people inside the White House and inside the administration does he have, and can he exercise control over? When we talked a while back about the Epstein files, and I brought to you one of the most fearful people that's still not being talked about inside the United States is Peter Thiel. And guess what? He's married at the hip with Mossad. He is married. This is the guy that is advancing the surveillance state inside the United States of America. And he has already done it inside of, worked with the Chinese. So, I mean, he's worked with Communist China. He's working with Israel because guess what? There are Orthodox Jews inside Israel that hate Bibi Netanyahu. Yep. That have done everything in their power to remove him and all his ilk.
And they can't. Jeff, what do you have to say about all this? Do you think the Midnight Hammer was just a smokescreen, or do you believe it? Do you think that there is more to the story that we aren't being told, that they actually, like John said, have the capabilities and they're developing the nuclear weaponry beyond what we are being told, instead of just using the uranium for what they're supposed to be?
Well, I think Midnight Hammer, what the intent was to take it out. But I think Midnight Hammer probably, in my estimation, had faulty intelligence. And they didn't get what they wanted to get. But to put a face on it, Trump come out and, had to do the dog and pony show of, it was a success. But I'm guessing it was probably, bad intelligence that got us to that point. Now, whether it came from Mossad, ISI, the KGB on that intelligence, or if it was just, piss poor analytics by our intelligence community. But now, and I do believe maybe it was used to buy time and to get. If you remember Trump during the Saddam Hussein, when we captured him, Trump said he didn't want to be the country that does regime changes. And I do believe it on face value. And I think that's why, if you look at the Iranian people, they are out there protesting. They're risking their lives. You have the IRGC doing raids. Far be it from the United States making a promise and not delivering again. Because we've made a lot of promises throughout the world and we've come up short.
Yeah.
And I think this is why we have this armada, these 3 carrier battle groups. We have all this heavy equipment and going in there to support the Iranian people to help them with this regime change if that's what they want. It sure seems like that's what they want. Now, getting to, there was a question in there about we training Chinese pilots.
Mm-hmm.
I look at it like this. I'm looking at the big picture, and I go back to the first Trump administration when, he did his world tour. And he sat down with all these big world leaders. And fast forward to today where, after operation that happened in Venezuela, and Trump says, we have some weapons that are scary, that no one else has. And I have a very strong suspicion that during Trump's world tour in his first term, he may have showed some of these world leaders what we got and what it can do to get these people on board, because I think this all links back to the Monroe Doctrine that Trump keeps bringing up and wants to institute, to where we take care of our own. Now, we're going to give you guys the ability to hold your own under the guise of this, Monroe Doctrine, and get rid of the United Nations is useless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the biggest money laundering farce. And, a lot of the people that come here from these other nations to bring in to the United Nations, send it to The Hague. We don't need it here. I mean, and that's just my opinion. I think it's a useless body anymore. And it's going to play out. I truly, because Trump only has 3 years. Well, he's got 2 years and change. And, I try to think long game with this. What happens after Trump leaves?
Yeah, that's terrifying right now. I don't even want to think about that.
Right.
I don't.
Because all of this script can be flipped.
Yes.
So if there is a plan in place, which I believe there is, something major has to happen in the next 6 to 12 months.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to say this question here that Mimi put out: what if we pulled all our armed forces out of the Middle East? What would Israel do? I'm going to answer that the simple way. I think we stay involved to stay in control and try to make allies as well. I think that if we pulled away from everything, then Trump would be afraid or have the concern that they would team up with somebody else and then turn on us. Even though we're a superpower, if everybody is against us and turns on us, that's not a very good thing. So I think that's why he tries to keep his hands involved in these worldly affairs and in trying to help them settle and negotiate. And I think that's why he says he's rather negotiate than have war. That's my simple common person answer, not having military background or anything. But I mean, that's why I think that the politicians do it or the presidents do it for the most part. John?
Well, I agree. That's true, Tammy. I mean, and the one thing, Israel as a standalone, you know, they have to stop their land grab.
Yep.
You know, because they're occupying lands. Go back and look at when they originally started their little occupation and how much land they've just taken from people. You know, you go to Syria, Yemen, they've infringed upon their neighbors violently. You know, no one talks about that. They don't want us to if we have a conversation about it, well, then I'm an anti-Semite. No, I'm not an anti-Semite. I got no dog in that. I'm a Christian, and in my Christian belief, you know, we're not supposed to kill and murder each other for a piece of land. And when you look at Israel's occupation and their push to advance occupation of more and more territory, at some point in time, you got to call them out. And if the United States of America stands with the rest of the Arab nations and stands in a hard agreement, okay, Israel, this is as big as you're ever going to get, you know, and when you look at the true Jewish people, most of the Jews that are there are all from Europe. They're not you know, if you said, okay, you can profess this homeland, if you can run your genealogy and prove that you're, you know, your ancestor to Abraham, because trust me, it's not going to happen. And Tucker Carlson, you know, when he interviewed Huckabee, he brought the hammer, he brought the truth. He said, hey, you know, what about this? Why do you agree with that? You know, and Huckabee created, he probably did more to do harm for us in the Arab countries than any mouthpiece ever did. He ought to be forced to resign because, I mean, you can't go tell all of the Arabs that signed into the Abraham Accords that no, Israel has a right to claim everything from one place to the sea. From what is it, the Euphrates? No, man, come on, Huckabee. And why would you say that and make that statement that you guess it would be all right if they did choose to occupy more land?
Yeah, he did.
Well, he's a fool.
Yep. Well, Jeff, go ahead.
I'm going to make a statement and I'm going to have to try to craft the words carefully because it seems to me that the Israeli government, in a sense, hides behind the Bible.
Yes.
And what I mean by that is they pull on the heartstrings of the Christians to justify everything that Israel does. Now, just think of what, you know, Russia has done to Ukraine by trying to take that land back, right? And we sent all this armament and, you know, special forces into Ukraine, CIA, Special Activities Division over there. But when, you know, the Palestinians, you know, that's a tough subject for a lot of people. You know, when Israel does their incursions, we don't send armament to back them up. Not saying that I agree with it, but I look at it in a perspective of this is how Israel has bought and paid for our government.
Yes.
By pulling on the heartstrings of the Christians.
Yeah, and we really and there's an open conversation that I've had multiple times. I have been attacked, and I have a friend that gets attacked daily because the American people do not separate Zionist Jews versus Orthodox Jews. And the Zionist Jews do rely on biblical Old Testament for their right to pursue a larger chunk of land. And that's a fact. And they make it about, well, you have to stand with us. We're Christian, we allow you to exercise your Christianity. Well, that's all BS too. The Christians are persecuted in Israel every single day. They're surrounded. They're cut off from, they got places they can go where they can't go inside of Israel. I mean, they're totally blocked. You can't enter this. You got to give me your papers. No, you're a Christian. You don't have access to this part of Israel. Well,
there was a nun that was interviewed, and I don't know if I think it was Tucker, about all that. And she said the stuff that you're being shown and told in America is not true. And she said the very thing that you're saying, John, is that it's a pay to play. Basically, if you pay the people, it's all corruption. You can get across, but otherwise you can't. And people have had the correct papers and have done through the proper channels what they need to do to be able to cross back and forth, and they don't let them do it. And this nun was amazing. That interview, if you guys haven't seen it that are watching, look it up. It is Tucker, and it's with a nun regarding all of that's going on. She said, we don't know the half of the truth of all of it.
Yeah, and I'm going to tell you, there's some real things that you can look at. If a Jew inside of Israel converts to Christianity, they better never leave, because they'll never be allowed back into Israel. And now that's so there's so much that's taking place, and they make it biblical. They want it to be biblical, but then a person starts looking at the Bible and starts reading the Christian Bible and says, well, look, I'm going to follow parts of the New Testament, the Gospels of Jesus Christ, way heavy on my heart. And I want to convert to become a Christian. Oh, no, don't bring that name up, because they want to focus, the Zionists focused only on the Old Testament and the Torah. That's it. They don't want to hear anything about the New Testament or Jesus Christ. They've done more to hide the powers of Jesus Christ and things that took place in the Middle East. The scrolls that have been captured, and look, if they were captured and held by Israel, they were never given to the Catholic Church or any Christian church, because they don't want those words to be available to touch the soul of people. Right. So I don't know. But the one thing I do know is, get ready. We're going to light them up. I mean, there's this armada is just not for eyeballs, and no, it's something's going down. When it goes down, early March, and whenever it's, but I think it's got to take, and there's so much happening in the background, so you got all the Epstein and all the financial stuff of how he was working with Mossad to funnel money and advance the Zionist movement. But then you also have attachments that we better be focusing on with our central bank, our Federal Reserve, and what's going to happen inside the United States. When Trump keeps preaching about the golden era, he's talking about us being forced, because if all this goes down with Iran, there's going to be a massive push by the BRICS nations to destroy the U.S. dollar as the world reserve currency. And when that happens, folks, it could flip our economy on its freaking head. And I'm talking about a stock market crash that we've never witnessed. And so Trump's got to have a game plan in place to go to that sound money real quick. There's so much happening in the first weeks of March up to March 15th. That it spells gloom and doom on a lot of, but here's the thing: know your heart, and that's one thing. I always, when my wife and I have long conversations, because she asks me all the time, "Why do you care so much? Why do you keep doing it? You sound like a preacher when you get into politics," and it's not that. I'm attached to my history. I'm old enough to be a patriot at my heart, because I was raised by the greatest generation. I was raised by a daddy that went to Vietnam and fought in Vietnam. I understand the warfighter mentality. I have a dear friend of mine who lost his nephew in Afghanistan in a cave, and it weighed heavy on my heart, and it does. And because the one thing we have to understand is the indoctrination process that we're seeing and the divide inside our own country. I think that the greatest reveal of the Epstein documents, I don't care whether you're left, right, Democrat, Republican, I don't care what your religious belief is. I don't know of any person, when you delve into this sickening stuff and what this man was allowed to carry out using our money, the Mossad's, Israel's money, against children. They were trafficking children through the United Nations. The high commissioners for refugees, they were funneling children all around the planet to these pedophiles. And look, rape and murder of children, I don't care who you are. I don't care what government you're with. I don't care what your ideology is. If I know that you've done an act that harmed a child or you raped a child, I'm not going to wait on some sheriff to deal with you. I'm going to deal with you man to man. Because that's evil that God will not allow. He's not going to stand for it. He doesn't. We have to say enough is enough. We don't care what the politics of war and all of that. We're tired of it. We know our history says World War I was all about economics in Europe. World War II, all about economics in Europe. That was economics. And what are we saying now? We're going to have this huge, great reset of financial systems around the world. China and the BRICS nations, Russia, Israel, they are all gold-backed currency. And we're going to be forced to it, whether we like it or not. So when this reset, they always strike out, and the weapon of these evil Zionist bastards has always been world wars. So be cautious, be understanding. History repeats itself.
Well, Jeff, I'm going to get your comments about what John had to say, but I just want to put in there with the Epstein files, it's more than just Epstein and Ghislaine. It is tied into everything that we have been talking about on this show for a very long time that goes into the world, the corruption and the abuses and everything else. That is why this is a big deal. And I think this opening up, this is probably one of the biggest stories in history that's going to be is Epstein and everybody connected financially with people and sex slaves and all that stuff. It's the biggest thing, and it is so much bigger than what people think. And that is why with everything going on about money and the collapse and all this that John's talking about is still about human nature. What have we become? What have we allowed society to become, that these government officials, these leaders have it's almost like there's two governments going on. There's some good and there's some evil. There's been an underlying current of evil that the good has allowed to occur. And we do need to take it all down, take it to one good government and have humanity get back on course to being human. Jeff, go ahead.
Well, I think I can sum up everything that John just stated with a question. Is this what 17 meant by save Israel for last?
Amen, brother.
Amen. And as much as a joke as people made, because when all this started, at least when I got involved and I was sitting in front of the computer going down rabbit holes for years, and even LW, and that's how we met. And then we were laughed at. And then we thought, well, maybe this isn't right. The great psyops that have gone on emotionally, mentally, physically for everything with COVID and everything else. And now here we are all these years later. We took a break. All these years later, we come back and so much of it has come true. It's incredible. But my thing is, for humanity to remain human, people have to be held accountable for what they did with COVID-19, Fauci, Birx. People have to be held accountable for what we know from the Epstein files. It is not overwhelming, and we will not freak out if we have no government left. Anybody left in a seat of any position of authority that was involved in any of that, it needs to be taken out. It is far better, I say, to have empty seats and start over, because we've got so many intelligent, brilliant, fighting true Americans that will make this country great again. We will build it from the ground up without having all these corrupt, crazy, nasty people in government anymore. I believe that we can do it. Go ahead,
yeah.
Jeff.
Yeah. And, with that, you can go back to a statement that my grandparents used to say: if you don't learn from history, you're destined to repeat it.
Absolutely, Jeff.
And we that's why I believe all of this stuff has to eventually come out. And it's going to be rough for a lot of people, just from some of the conversations that I had of people that seen Anthony Weiner's laptop and how disgusting that was.
Oh, gosh.
And, some of the stuff that, not in a disgusting manner, but that was on Nancy Pelosi's laptop, with the treasonous stuff, with the insider trading. Can
I ask a question? Not to interrupt,
Sure.
but what happened to that laptop? Where is it? What the information on it? We've never heard anything about her laptop since it's been taken away, or whatever. Why is that?
Well, I think, all you have to do is go to Trump's speech. It's State of the Union, when he basically called out Nancy Pelosi. I don't think it's in possession of, well, I take that back. I think there's a copy of it at DOJ.
Yeah.
But I think the original is either sitting down in Florida or in Fort Bragg, and being handled by JAG attorneys, because as much as we say the words treason and sedition, that's the military's. If there's an attempted coup on the U.S. government, Trump, how many times has Trump come out and said, the Insurrection Act is the only safeguard for our republic, that if enacted, it's been enacted many of times, but to be enacted basically on a worldwide scale for the United States, to bring down, this whole tentacles that have infiltrated the United States. And you have to have a commander in chief with, the Cueves to get out there and say, okay, boys, go do your job, and not hold their hands behind their back, and let them do what they know how to do. Years ago, when we started this and we would talk about 17, we had so many detractors calling us crazy.
Oh, yeah.
And those people have seemed to have disappeared, because you don't hear much about it, because I think they even see the writing on the wall, whether they want to admit it publicly or not. There's so much stuff in that is coming true. And for, it to be a big psyop, or, a figment of everybody's imagination who's crazy, there's all you have to do is look at the most powerful person in the world to come out and basically, without saying it, saying, yes, this whole thing is an operation. Boy, he sure gives a lot of signs. And why the Democrats haven't asked, him to go to Bethesda to get a psychological evaluation for doing all that stuff is beyond me.
Yeah. I want to ask you a question regarding, Mimi saying President Trump needs to declare a state of emergency and implement military tribunals. I heard somebody on War Room saying that tribunals are not obviously held through the federal government, so we would never see that because it's a total separate, like, military function at Gitmo and everything else. So is that a falsehood? Is that why we heard years ago if there were military tribunals, they would be recorded and they may be played back at some time, but we wouldn't actually see them live?
Well, yeah, I do believe that would probably be the scenario. But for as much as the American people have been brainwashed by the mass media, I would say 85% of the American populace, if a 4-star general or admiral come out and said that we dodged a curveball, your country was going to be overtaken by powers foreign and domestic in an attempted coup of the United States government, and they would show the proof, I think 85% of the American people would be on board. Now, when you start introducing children into this equation, I would say 95, because, you know, there's 5% of the sickos out there.
Yeah. Yeah, but
Yeah.
everybody would want to deal with that. Could you answer this question? Can you see that, Jeff? Could our 3 carrier strike groups be over there to deal with Israel instead of Iran?
No, I don't think that would be the scenario. I think more of Israel will be an exposure type scenario, just because because of the Bible. I believe there are 3 battle groups over there. You have one in the Med, one in the Gulf, and then one in the southern part there. Is going to be to protect the other countries, because when and if this does kick off, the mullahs and the IRGC know that they're going to be playing for all the marbles. And if they believe that the Ayatollah is going to be taken out, then, you may see a launch.
Okay. I wanted to read, I'm going to read this little X post Marjorie Taylor Greene had posted. Now, I know people aren't a fan of hers and stuff, but she obviously was in Congress, did fight the good fight till her and Trump had a falling out. But I was going to read this, and I wanted to see what you and John had to say about this and what your opinions were, because once again, she's somebody of authority. Some people still, or not authority, I should say, but somebody with inside information, and some people still like her and believe she fought the good fight. So this is interesting what she had to say. And after we go through that, what you and John have to say, if there's anything you and or John want to bring up that we haven't yet, then we'll go ahead and go to that. But this is what she posted. She said, everything in Washington will be purely performative for the remainder of the year to gaslight you to vote in the midterms. We all knew and discussed the internal meetings back in January of 2025 that we only had 6 to 9 months to do anything serious. And after the third quarter of 2025, our opportunity would be gone because courage would fade and campaign mode would kick in. And we did talk about that here, about everybody be, preoccupied with campaigning. And all that was really accomplished was an extension of the tax law with a few additions. No accountability for COVID or 4 years of lawfare for the 2020 election, and no accountability for the Epstein files. Not only is there nothing tangible in terms of accountability, but Republicans have done nothing to make health insurance affordable and hide from the issue like it's the pedophiles in the Epstein files they don't even want to deal with. Meanwhile, we're on the verge of war with Iran from the no more foreign wars presidents. This is where you are now. She has some very valid points in that, You guys. So what say you, Jeff, first, and then we'll go to John?
Well, I think she put all of them out on Front Street. I don't I don't particularly, care for her per se. I think she went to Congress with very good intentions, and she found out possibly how corrupt they were, and she wasn't on any of the committees that would really give vast amount of intelligence. Normally, that's reserved for the Gang of Eight. But I go back to my original take that I'm not quite sure there's going to be midterms. I've had two buddies of mine that have said that they've gotten paperwork to re-register to vote, and they've called their board of elections and said, hey, is this real? Why do I have to re-register to vote? And they give them kind of a song and dance, because I really don't think they know why this is happening. I mean, to me, that's the only true way that if this White House is serious about all the allegations, and I believe they have all the evidence of the allegations, that is going to be the only true resolution, is to clean the voter rolls, have people re-register to vote, and get rid of the concept that showing voter ID is racist, when if you want a job in New York City to shovel snow, you have to show 3 forms of ID.
Yeah, crazy stuff. John, what do you think?
Well, it's all a movie, and there's no way. First off, 95% of all that we have been taught and learned is based on lies. We have allowed the education process to remove the patriotic history of what America Foundation was. Our children got no clue and concept of understanding of the Constitution. So the Republic, has been captured through indoctrination. And that's done through the criminals that operate Washington, D.C. The federal government is foul, it's corrupt. It has taxed us without representation for decades now. And this all has to come out. And when it comes to arrest and the lack of arrest, yep, that upsets me. I agree with Marjorie. We know the crimes. We listen to all the hearings. We listen to all the testimony and the lies from Fauci, everything that we're seeing in the Epstein papers, but everything we know about Washington and what's been revealed about the foul nature of what took place in 2020. The whole Russiagate, the fact that the FBI was deeply involved in going and filing lies to the FISA court to be able to spy on Trump and the Trump administration. And they continued it. So we know all that. We've got all that. And yet, no arrest, no indictments. Well, there's one possibility. Could it be that those people that are known traitors and have carried out acts of sedition have already received justice inside a military tribunal? Because it won't become public knowledge until it all is released. It can't. If you did it all at one time, imagine what the upset would look like in this nation. We can all say, yeah, they're corrupt, and so many people don't even vote because they don't see their voice. They don't see the power of the vote, because it can be fixed, it can be rigged, and now everybody knows it. Our Congress knows it. They've put it out in front of us to let us see exactly what's taking place, but yet the Department of Justice, the very weapon and instrument for the people, our Department of Justice, our Attorney General, has not issued, and the indictments that are taking place are underlings. This rot goes to the very seat of power in Washington, D.C. This rot is in our courts. This rot is in our Congress and in our Senate, and it's happening inside of our states. And we haven't done anything. We've let this rot just continue to eat away at this nation. And that's my why. Why do I care? Well, I care because I know what the foundation of America is about. I have a patriotic heart and a love of my nation. I have a love for every soldier that ever bled and died for me so that I could have a voice to speak. That's why I'm not silenced very often, because
Amen.
I won't allow that, and we shouldn't. So we have to know and understand our why to be comfortable with, number one, your attachment and connection to the God that created every one of us. Because ultimately, whatever Gog and Magog does and takes place, because you got to look at where we're sitting over there, folks. It's biblical. It is biblical. And don't, now understand that Russia and China have moved some battleships into the same turf that we're occupying. And they're going to probably side with Iran because they have a partnership.
Yeah.
You got to understand that. Don't forget that. Don't let that slip through the cracks. Nobody's coming out. You don't hear the media talking about China's movements of ship into the Med. You don't hear that. You don't hear that Russia's also sending. So be guarded and understand. You could be watching the mother of all wars. If this thing goes sideways and it's not just strictly about regime change, it could go sideways quick and we could end up in World War III. Prepare yourself, prepare your home, prepare your family.
And won't it look so different compared to the other wars, Jeff B? Your thoughts, because it's going to be about technology going down, the grids going down, everything else, and it's going to be terrifying. What say you?
Well, just think what 4 or 5 years ago, the solar wind hack. Think about our electric grid. Where do most of these components come from? China.
Yes.
Just think of your iPhones, where all your cell phones, where are they being made? China. So they have, they could possibly win a war without firing a shot.
They may have a kill switch. And listen, I'm going to tell you something too, because it's always when we look at immigration and Trump and ICE, and they're all focusing on everybody from South America. That's all great. What about the 3 divisions of Chinese nationals that were brought into this country during the Biden administration? 3 military-age division of Chinese men are in this country. You ever hear anything about that?
No,
is that ever spoken in mainstream media?
What other story died really, really quick about the Chinese was the Chinese police stations.
Yeah.
And now there was a story surfaced that they're in, I believe it was New York, to where some Chinese Americans were saying that they were getting visits from the CCP out of this Chinese police station for them coming out and criticizing the CCP in China, and their government. And don't forget about remember all the police uniforms that were stolen years ago?
Yeah.
Oh, Jing, I forgot about all that.
Right.
Oh,
and how about the recent news about the Chinaman out in California operating a bio lab inside of a house in California?
Correct.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Don't forget, basement. Folks.
Yeah.
I mean, it's easy to forget that stuff. It really is, because there is so much. But I mean, what the hell is he doing that here? And that's crazy.
Well, and look at them buying all the farmland near these military bases. I mean, that should lay right at the doorstep of, the Department of Agriculture. Why in the hell did you allow this to happen? I think when all of this kicks off, that's why you had all of these National Guard and rapid reaction forces and you have units within, the FBI and that have been created inside the country to handle when this shit breaks loose.
Yeah.
Because, the writing's on the wall, and I think once the first bomb hits Iran, and it's going to be a decapitation, and I'm sure the first target's going to be the Ayatollah if they want to put in the Shah's grandson. Those agents, those sleeper agents that came across the northern and southern border may be activated, and we may be looking at Ramadi and Baghdad 2.0.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, insane. Well, Jeff, was there something else that I was going to cover? I told you guys, and I forgot that you said we're going to get to it, I think earlier, and I forgot, or did we already cover it?
Which one was
What
that?
was it about when you were talking about Adam Schiff not looking good coming out?
Yeah, when he come out of the Chuck Schumer.
Chuck Schumer, yeah, that's who it was.
When he come out of that Gang of Eight meeting, and he looked like he saw a damn ghost.
So can you explain to people again, for those that may not know, what the Gang of Eight is?
All right, so the Gang of Eight is your top congressional members that get briefed on damn near everything that hits the PDB, which is the Presidential Daily Brief. They do that for continuity of government purposes. It ranges anything from if there's an incident aboard a submarine that, if one of our subs get detected, to all out war or some type of terrorist threat. And, they are not supposed to share that information with anybody else in Congress or their staffers. Well, sometimes that's kind of hard to do. And basically it provides a sense of cover for the president for not informing Congress of certain elements that go on in the country that if the American people knew 99% of the stuff in the intelligence community that goes on, they'd probably go to Australia, because it's a lot of very, very, very detailed information and data that they provide those members of Congress.
Yeah, and that the Gang of Eight is 4 Republicans and 4 Democrats.
Right.
Typically, the chairs, both Democrat and Republican chairs of the Intel Committee, are members of the Gang of Eight. The leaders, members of the Gang of Eight, because those are you have to know who these 8 people are, because when you start sharing the intelligence that's being shared with them, this is not stuff that can be leaked. Right. You gotta, because if one of them ever leaks anything, they're gonna have a noose slipped around their neck.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, this, some of the most guarded secrets of the United States is shared with the Gang of Eight, and probably one of the biggest secrets that is shared with the Gang of Eight is placement of our nuclear triad, throughout the world.
Yep. All right. Well, that's pretty much all I wanted to cover. I guess we could go to final thoughts, unless there's something else you guys wanted to talk about real quick that I haven't got to. But I think so far, it's been a wonderful, informative show, and I appreciate both of you so much, and the people in chat as well. So is there anything else you want to cover, Jeff, or are you good for a final thought?
No, I think we're good. I'm sure we'll probably be doing one before Monday.
Probably, yeah, with everything going on, that's for sure. Yeah. Okay, so you want to give the final thought then?
Yeah, I think, probably sooner than later, there's going to be an event or multiple events that is probably going to shake the core of the country. And I hope that whatever it is, people put their politics aside, their hate, the hatred for the country. I mean, I've seen, video clips of, when Trump was sworn in, where people left the country, and the countries that they left, they realized, wow, maybe America isn't as bad as I thought, and I want to go back. We have, this country has their sins, there's no doubt, but this is probably the greatest experiment that has ever been conducted, and yet we have Americans that, through power and greed, have taken advantage of it and allowed, for the rest of us Americans to sit and suffer.
Yeah. What about you, Johnny?
Well, I'll just continue. So it's clear, and you can ask anybody that you run into. Our American political system, especially our federal government, has sold us all out and down the river. The prosperity for the working class American, it's, even though it seems to be improving under Trump, it's still in decline. But with everything that's taken place, and you have to recognize, when we start talking about a false flag event, some national event that would raise and unite all the American people against a common enemy. Let's see, Pearl Harbor. Think about that. Think about what took place after Pearl Harbor. That's when that's a day that will live in infamy. Then go and think about 9/11. And what did that do? It united us as a people, to say, okay, that's the end of these jihadis. We're gonna put an end to this. And so, false flags, it could be a very catastrophic event that will either happen inside of our borders, or it'll happen outside of our borders, but we'll be so outraged that we'll be drawn in to the wartime footing. So in that, everybody keep your head on a swivel. Be aware of where you're at, where you're traveling to. Right now for me, the big thing is getting in my garden, and I hope that everybody gardens. It's a good way to be in nature and to be in the presence of God. And a garden is a great thing. It offers food security, because one of the things that always happens in turmoil, whatever the turmoil, the victory gardens of World War II, that was a reality. You've got to be able to feed yourself. You got to have shelter. You got to have water, a supply of water, drinking water. Those are all things that, regardless of what happens, you should maintain that staple just for your own family security. Be in touch with family, but most importantly, be in touch with God. Find a way to connect yourself and your family to the power of prayer and God. And my prayers go out to Brother Mike's mama, and to him also.
Yeah. And my final thought's going to be buckle up. I don't usually ever say that, but buckle up. After what I've learned tonight with these two and with what we're seeing out there, we really have to try to keep our heads about us, buckle up, stay in prayer, stay to God, and try to be kind to one another. People, not everybody's in it like we are, or some of these viewers. So be kind to people if they ask you questions. Don't say, "Are you an idiot? You don't know that." Or don't say, I told you so. I told you so. Just kind of be kind and gentle, because it's wonderful that there are more people trying to find out what really is going on and wanting to have those conversations, which I think are extremely important to help us unite. Now, will the left ever unite with us? I don't think so. But you know what? We always can have hope and faith. So with that being said, I thank these two gentlemen and for being with us tonight. Thank you, viewers and listeners. And like Jeff said, you never know when we'll be on next. I'm going to wait to see with these to. If something pops and they want to go on, I'll be more than happy to go on. So with that being said, peace, God bless. Thank you guys, and we'll see you guys on the next one.
Yep. Good evening.